Hello?
Hi, how was the show?
The show was really good. The show was really good last night. But
Tell me everything.
do you know what today is?
Today is the last day with Gary.
Good.
Jordan and I pumping out a quick 15-20 minute workout. God, my arms are tired. Hold this, Jordan. Just hold like this.
Do you remember when I called you? And I was like, all right, Mom, you're gonna wanna sit down. I have some big news.
Yeah,
Remember? That was 3 years,
Yeah.
over 3 years ago now.
I know. It was crazy.
When I started with Gary and like when I got the job, it was just like, I was in such a different place mentally, emotionally. It's just crazy that 3 years is over. All right, so today is June 1st, 2019. Yesterday was my last day coaching Gary Vaynerchuk, and I was trying to figure out how I wanted to structure this video, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start by reading you something. So I'm gonna read this. Since 6 a.m. on May 31st, 2016, I've coached Gary Vaynerchuk every day.
Jordan, how do I work out?
100% every time.
That's it. And I fucking hate working out.
7 days a week. I've coached him in New York City, Los Angeles, Miami, Hong Kong, London, Ireland, Belgium, Poland, Hogsmeade. I've traveled all over the world with Gary, and with the exception of a few holidays and sick days, we've spent at least 45 minutes together every single day for 3 years straight. I've learned a lot from Gary, so much I could legitimately write an entire book on it. And while there are too many for this video, I want to share two of the most important ones with you. Number one, your insecurities are the jail of your emotions.
So many of you are keeping a secret inside that's just insecurities that your mom gave you, or your dad gave you, or your older sibling gave you. A lot of you are sitting with them. Half of you are sitting with them. I met you tonight. The fact that I know that if you made a video right now and just told your truth, if you just took fucking Instagram right now, flipped it, and said it, it would change your fucking life.
I remember the first time he said this to me. Think of it like this. The other day I wrote a post on my Instagram outlining how I'm self-conscious of being short and being bald and a whole bunch of other things. Hundreds, literally hundreds of people joined me in the comment section revealing their deepest insecurities. Things they said they've never told anybody. But once I told you my insecurities, and once you told me yours, it was almost like the insecurity disappeared. It was no longer something to be self-conscious of, because as Gary once told me, and has told me actually time and again, once you own it, you own it, because nobody can use it against you anymore.
I think a lot of people that struggle with fitness and health and fitness, and really probably in life in general in different disciplines, is they're unable to be accountable to themselves.
The second thing, what's the worst that happens? Anytime I've been worried or anxious about doing something, Gary's asked me, what's the worst that happens? Like, worst case scenario, what is the worst that happens? And at first, my mind would always try to create the most worst, terrible, awful, worst case scenario ever. But then I'd relax and I'd think, and more often than not, the worst case scenario usually wasn't that bad. Definitely not worth panicking over, at least. Because no matter what happens, you can always get up and try again. That's on you. You can always do that. And the only person who can stop you is you. One more set and you're done.
Oh shit.
Really, really good work, man.
I'm now, 2.5, 3 years in. Mike did it for 2 years now with Jordan. He'll do it for 3 years. He's 6 months in.
But when you have taken over with Gary, what has been your main focus?
We've actually gone through a bunch of different focuses throughout. The main thing, number one, was helping him feel really good. That was from day one to now. The most important thing is make sure he feels really good, no pain. So we've improved his soft tissue quality all over, especially in his hips and his legs. And then now, also in addition to that, I just want to stack on some muscle for the next couple months before we start doing a little bit of a summer cut.
I'm gonna lose 15 pounds, but all the muscle's gonna be there, D-Rock, and that means shirtless keynotes.
So how do you feel now that it's over?
This is the most common question I've been getting a lot. Like, how do you feel? Is it exciting? It's super emotional. Some things are really exciting about it and some things are really sad about it and nostalgic. I remember when I first started coaching Gary, the first day, like the very first day I asked Gary, I was like, what's your number one goal? What is the one thing that you want to achieve while I'm coaching you for the next 3 years? His old coach and now actually current coach, Mike, will laugh when he hears this because he just pointed to his hip and he was like, if you could just fix my hip pain, it'll all be worth it, the whole 3 years. It's amazing because Gary no longer has hip pain and that's a huge win. But throughout the process of working together, we went from his hip, we went to his adductor, we went to his neck. His neck was so bad, this is crazy. His neck was so bad, number one, if I tried to touch his neck just like this, he'd shudder. His assistant Tyler used to only book him on one side of an airplane because he couldn't bend his neck to the right, he could only do it to the left. And so if he wanted to sleep, he wanted to be able to put his head on the side of the airplane. So we worked through his neck pain, now that's totally fine. Worked with his shoulder pain, that's totally fine. Worked with his back pain, I have some Instagram posts on that. Like Gary's back would go out every year, several times a year from the time he was 18, and now he's pain-free. Super nostalgic and super emotional. I've been through a lot with Gary. I think any coaches watching would probably agree that the greatest feeling in the world is when you see your clients succeed, when you see them in a better place because of what you've helped them with. Not because of you, but because of what you've helped them with. I think it's super important to realize, like, Gary put in the work. Gary was the one waking up at 5:30, 6 in the morning, getting to the workouts, paying for me to travel with him all over the world. Like, that was his decision. That's a huge sacrifice. So it's just super emotional on that front. And for me personally, I've actually never spoken about this before, but I almost quit 3 times in my first 6 months coaching Gary. Nobody understands what it's like unless you've done it, in which case that's really only one other person, my buddy Mike. When I say that coaching Gary is 7 days a week, it's literally 7 days a week. And when he's in Hong Kong, I'm in Hong Kong. When he's in LA, I'm in LA. When he's in New York, I'm in New York. When he's in Miami, I'm in Miami. When he's in London, I'm in London. It is every day. And people are like, oh, you only coach him for an hour a day. It's like, yeah, but then imagine how stressful it is going to the airport for one trip. And imagine doing that multiple times a week, every week, schedule changing on the fly. It's super stressful. And when I first started coaching him for the first 6 months, it was so challenging. I was living in Israel, moved to New York to coach Gary. I was trying to juggle my own business and trying to give my absolute best to Gary and then to my other clients. And it was super tough, and I legitimately almost quit 3 times. I remember being on the phone with his assistant Tyler being like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Looking back, pushing through those tough times, one of the best decisions I ever made. I think a lot of people really struggle with, should I stay, should I quit? And there's no right answer in any situation. Who knows what would have happened if I quit? Could have been amazing, I don't know. But I do know that sticking it through was, without question, one of the best decisions I ever made. And I'm super glad that I did. All the lessons I've taken from Gary and learned from Gary and worked with Gary, it's crazy that 3 years is up.
Okay, breaking news in this episode. We have to repeat it. Go ahead.
So
Fast.
All right, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from Gary in social media comments when people are commenting on your
And this
stuff.
is recent.
This is very recent. If you're putting out content and people are commenting, being assholes, whatever it is, the mindset shift was, instead of being mad, instead of like arguing with them, instead of being a dick back, feel bad for them. Like, feel sorry that they're there sitting at the computer, like typing mean comments, like, while you're there putting out good content. That for me was one of the biggest.
And you might not be putting out good content. You think it's good content because it's your own content. You might not. They may be right. My whole point is, I just feel bad for somebody who's got so much pain inside that they need to tear other people down.
You've talked about hard work, and when you guys both got off the plane one day, what was that one thing you learned from him?
Oh yeah, that's a good story. So I'll never forget this. I remember one time, probably within the first 10 months of coaching Gary, we got off a flight. It was like 1 a.m. We got off. It was Gary, D-Rock, and I. And Gary sort of sidled up next to me as I was walking off the plane. He was like, "What's the one difference between what you do now versus what you did before you started working with me?" And he was speaking in regard to my own business. Like, immediately, there was no question. I knew exactly the answer. Before I started working with Gary, I thought that I worked hard. And realistically, I did work hard. But once I started working with Gary and seeing how hard he works, seeing how hard his team works, seeing how hard his entire ecosystem works, I was like, man, I'm leaving a lot on the table. And it's an odd thing, because when you're building your own brand, your own business, a lot of times you wear that like a badge on your sleeve. You're like, I work hard, I have my own business. And before I started working with Gary, I'd be like, I work super hard, people don't understand. And then I started working with Gary, and it went from, I work super hard, people don't understand, to, oh, I don't work hard at all. Like, I'm leaving a lot on the table. And not only that, but when I do start working harder, that hard work isn't a badge on my sleeve anymore. That's just like, I do it because I love it and because I'm blessed to be able to do it. That's what Gary's ecosystem is. Like, Gary has the most positive, optimistic, hardworking ecosystem of people I've ever seen. It's unbelievable. And he's the nucleus of it. He's the center of this ecosystem that just radiates positivity and hard work based around doing something you love. And I know a lot of people, a lot of Gary's haters will spew shit they don't really understand online, saying, oh, Gary's just faking it. He's not faking it. And he makes everybody around him a better person. That's a fact.
So I think another question is, like, why are you and Mike switching on and off for 3 months? And what do these next 3 months look like for you?
As my 3 years was coming to an end, Gary was like, do you want to renew or not? Do you want to keep going? And I didn't want to leave Gary, but I also knew I couldn't do another full year, 7 days a week. I'm burned out. I'm just exhausted. I sacrificed my sleep. I sacrificed my health. I sacrificed a lot. I don't regret a second of it. But going forward, I need to prioritize my own health and my own business and everything. So what we decided was that Gary's old coach and one of my best friends in the world, Mike Vicanti, we're gonna switch back and forth now. So Mike just started today, June 1. He's gonna be with Gary for 3 months, and then I'll be with Gary for 3 months, and then Mike will be with him for 3 months, and I'll be with him for 3 months. We'll switch off back and forth. It's a blessing for every one of us, because we all love working with each other. We all sort of get breaks when we need it, and then we get to sort of dive back in when we need it. I think the biggest issue that I struggled with while I was coaching Gary the last 3 years is I let my own personal fitness go. I used to be an elite power lifter. I trained, like, I didn't miss a training session for years. Literally over 1,000 training sessions in a row. I didn't miss one. And when I started working with Gary, I let it go. I didn't prioritize it. There's no other excuse except I just prioritized other stuff. And I ate like an asshole. Didn't get as many workouts in as I could have or should have. Now I'm getting back on track, and I've been doing it for the last few months. I feel really good. I feel the best I've felt physically and mentally in a long time. For the next 3 months, I have my own personal training goals, which, you know, I'll be sharing here on this YouTube channel. I'm gonna be documenting a lot of my workouts, my nutrition, meals that I'm eating and cooking, the workouts that I'm doing. I'm doing all that here. My own personal transformation. We can put up the progress pictures of what I've already transformed over the past couple months. And then in terms of my own business, I wanna do a lot more speaking events. We already have several booked, doing one in Maine coming up, doing one in July actually with Gary. I might have one in Miami as well coming up. Basically a lot more speaking engagements. And then really focusing on my inner circle. My inner circle is my top priority as well. Like, they're like my number one. Just giving them a lot more, working with Inner Circle coach Susan Niebergall just to put out the absolute best content we possibly can. While coaching Gary and working with Gary every day was arguably one of the greatest blessings of my life. I know he's gonna be happy to see me taking everything I've learned and then utilizing the time I now have to put that into helping other people.
If there's one thing you want people to leave and take with from this video, what would that be?
When I was 20 years old, I was invited to train at one of the best, strongest gyms in the world, Westside Barbell. I increased my strength by 300 pounds. My squat, bench press, deadlift increased by 300 pounds that summer. And I remember talking to one of the lifters there. His name is Dave Tate. He didn't lift there at that point, but I spoke to him in that summer, and big mentor of mine. And one of his most famous sayings is, when people say, well, how am I supposed to get as strong as the people at that gym? Because I'm not there. I'm not training at that gym. And so Dave would always say, if you came to Westside, do you think that you'd get way stronger? And I say, yeah, absolutely. And he'd be like, so train like you're at Westside. You don't have to be here to get as strong as the guys here. You don't have to be here to train like an animal. You just gotta train like an animal wherever you are. And that was, the hairs on my arms stand up thinking about that. It's like, you don't have to be in any special facility to train like a high level lifter. You just gotta go in there with that mindset and that mentality wherever you are. And so to the people who are like, well, how do I succeed if I'm not with Gary? How do I succeed if I don't have that opportunity to coach Gary? Or how do I succeed if I don't have that opportunity to be in that ecosystem? You don't have to be in the ecosystem to succeed. You just gotta work like you're in that ecosystem wherever you are. Because really, and this is probably the best lesson I've ever taken from Gary, is it's all here and it's all here. If you love it and you're willing to put in the time and put in the work, it doesn't matter where you are, who you're with, you'll make it happen. And you can come up with any excuses that you want, any reasons for not being able to succeed that you want, any disadvantages that you have. But the reality is it's all on you. It's all on me now going forward. I'm not with Gary for the next 3 months. I'm not in the ecosystem anymore. It's all on you. You don't have to be here. You just have to be willing to put in the work.